it looks like it's 9 o'clock. We got a bunch of people on. What I wanted to do is first of all, thank you and introduce you to our audience tonight. My name is Captain Anthony Grassi. I'm from Finchaser Charters. I'm the saltwater Northeast Navionics specialist, co-hosting this with Pat, and we're fortunate enough tonight to learn a little bit about his expertise. If you have a question, please make sure that you type in your question, and I will make sure before we end our webinar tonight, which is sponsored by Navionics and as well as Pat's affiliates, which is Clam and some other companies that he's involved with. So Captain Pat Kalmerton was born and raised on the water, and at 18 years old, he started Wolfpack Adventures with his father, Roy, and brother, Jared, on Lake Michigan. And in 2003, Pat started traveling the country, as you've heard our conversation tonight, with his passion for fishing, and became a guru in ice fishing. And I'm looking forward to it, and I hope the rest of you guys are looking forward to, or gals, to learning a little bit more about his techniques that he uses on the ice. Again, this is sponsored by Navionics. Also, if you have any questions, please make sure that you type the questions in, and I will have Pat answer them as best he can. All right, Pat, you're on.
Hello. First off, thank you for taking the time to come over and sit down with this. I know that, especially here in Wisconsin, I'm originally from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Just a little background to myself is Wolfpack Adventures is one of the businesses, or the business that I am co-owner with. My father, my brother, myself decided to start it back in 2001. And it started with a boat that I was fishing off of as a first mate since I was basically 12 years old. My brother was already a captain for him, and we ended up going into fishing right after high school. I was a GPS technician, traveled all over the country doing real-time and aerial GPS, making sure that the elevation, topographic, and road maps are correct for everyday use. Well, as I was traveling all over the country, it's one of them where I miss fishing. Fishing was my heart, my soul, my passion, everything that was all about it. So I came back and decided to ask my brother and father if we decided, or if we wanted to get into the fishing industry. So that's a little history about that. We ended up buying the boats one of the boats that my brother and myself cut our teeth on growing up on Lake Michigan out of Sheboygan. And we couldn't figure out a name. I'll just give you a little history on Wolfpack Adventures. Went up to the cabin and couldn't figure out what we wanted to call it. All the other places, they had a reel this and a reel that, and it was just what did we believe in? Well, on the wall we had a Wolfpack Creed, it was called, and it was, respect your elders, teach your young, hunt when you must, play when you can, that type of thing. It's everything that we believed in, and so we became Wolfpack Adventures. With that being said, we went up to the local high school to get the town involved, and once we got the town involved, it came back with a bunch of logos and all that, and it was pretty cool the way that started. So we salmon fished for a long time, or I guess we've been salmon fish forever, but that's how we started. As time went on, we decided that our clientele was asking for so much more, and Wolfpack Adventures was so much more. We enjoyed everything that we did. We did a lot of duck hunting. We did a lot of salmon fishing. We did a lot of ice fishing. We did a lot of turkey hunting. So we just kept opening up and opening up and opening up. Well, in 2003, I had the opportunity to become a pro staff for another company. And with that being said, they gave me the opportunity to travel all over the United States, go to all the writer events. I've been down to ICAST, I've been to ATA, I've been to SHOT, I've been to every writers conference there is. And the reason I started doing that is because my love of the promotional side of this sport. Watching women and children getting involved is an extremely exciting part of it. Yeah, I'm going to get into the women and children getting into the sport of ice fishing. Is it touches home. It touches home because I have children. A lot of people have children, and that's what's so cool about tip-up fishing is you don't have to be a pro to be able to do it. There's so many of you that already have tip-ups laying around. You either bought them, you got them as a present when you were a kid. You got them for a Christmas present under the tree when you were growing up. Everybody growing up, I would say about 95% of the people that I talk to, either at sports shows, at different tournaments, at different areas, everybody has a tip up. And I found in different areas of the United States, some are being utilized, some are not. So Minnesota is probably the biggest hurdle as far as my love of tip-up fishing goes. And it's kind of funny because Clam headquarters is in Minnesota, and the hurdle that I have there is you're allowed 2 lines. You're allowed 2 lines apiece during the ice fishing season, not open water. Now, open water is 1, but ice fishing, you're allowed 2 lines. But in Wisconsin, you're allowed 3. Let's say North Dakota, you're allowed 4. Montana, you're allowed 6. So when I started talking to different people all over the country, I could not wrap my head around why people were limiting themselves to 1 or 2 lines. If you're legally allowed to run more than 1 line, why are you not taking that opportunity to do so? There's a lot of different reasonings being, you talk to me, oh, I love to feel that that head tug, or I love to feel that bite of that fish when it first hits. That's great. I love jigging too. I really do. Don't get me wrong. I will sit there and jig all day long. I'm diehard. I mean, I will drill and drill and drill until that until that auger either runs out of gas or my shoulders can't pick up an auger anymore. But I will have my legal limit of lines up. And here's why. Nowadays and age, everybody has to work a lot more than their 40 hours. The day of going to work for your 40 hours and going back home are done. Okay, everybody can probably agree with that, where you just can't do it anymore. Sports are getting more expensive for your children. Food is getting more expensive. You're going to work on Saturdays because you're behind. You're doing whatever the case may be that is making you spend less time on the water, is where I guess tip-ups can come into play. But going fishing is one of the things right now. I guess right now I'm kind of concerned the next few days because I'm going to start from safety all the way up. I'm huge into believing in safety. I am going to talk about ice picks. I'm going to make sure that everybody has ice picks, and you're going to see those coming through, no matter how thick the ice is, where the mobility is a long ways. So now that you know a little bit about myself, I'm going to kind of jump into it. All right. And I'm going to show you a couple of different things. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right. Hopefully everybody can see all right. But there's a lot of different options of tip-ups, okay? So here's the rail style. I call it the rail style because you have 2 rails. It's the same thing as the wood is going to be. Throughout this whole presentation, it doesn't matter what color of tip-up you have. It doesn't matter if you have a beaver dam. It doesn't matter if you have a clam. It doesn't matter if you have a Fravel. Obviously, I use clam. That's the brand that I choose to use, the smoothness of the tip up is it's extremely smooth. Things are very possible of a lot of capabilities of this. So on the rail style, you have a bunch of different options. On the round style, there's a couple of different options, or the round being the polar or the thermal. Let's see here. Right here is where I'm talking the round style. So if I start talking round style, if I start talking the rail style, whatever the case may be, just so you're aware of what it is. So let's go back to limited lines. Before we really get into that, jig fishing. You get to the lake. I'm gonna kind of walk you through this. And I don't have any PowerPoint. I'm a hands-on. We're gonna have a good time here. So let's say we're gonna go get to the lake. I'm gonna grab this over here. We're gonna get to the lake. I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna grab my rod case. Okay. So once I open up my rod case, what I'm gonna do, let's say there's 3 of us that go fishing. So it's Tony, myself, and let's throw a Rachel in there. I don't know why, but Rachel, Tony, and myself, we're all gonna go fishing. Okay. Here, open this up. I'm gonna grab my jig stick. Matter of fact, right here. So this here, my jig stick. Everybody loves jig fishing, right? All right, so I grab my jig stick. Rachel and Tony both grab their jig stick. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go out. We're gonna grab our stick. We're gonna start jigging right here. We're jigging right here. We're having a good time. We're catching some fish. Oh, the fish stopped a little bit. We're gonna move. We're gonna move. 3rd or 4th place, we get into a decent school of fish. That school of fish is the school of fish that we want to stay on. It's either the 7.5, 8-inch bluegill, 9-inch bluegill, whatever the case may be. Now, going back to the bluegills and stuff, we'll get into that later. Anywho, we're jigging. 3 of us are jigging, we're catching fish, and all of a sudden, bang, it stops. We can't figure out why it stopped. Crappies are more notorious for, you know, the school that constantly goes around. They didn't leave. They're just kind of going around. And every one of us have been in the position where everybody says, you got a hole hop. You got a hole hop. You got a hole hop. That's great. And when I go over to this hole and I catch 2 or 3 fish and all of a sudden they die down or they become stunted, because the first 5 minutes at that hole, I'm going to get the biggest panfish that I'm going to get out of that hole. And then all of a sudden, that size is going to start coming down. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to catch that size again, and that's going to start coming down again. So why is it when I get to that hole, I'm catching the bigger fish out of the first couple of fish, and then all of a sudden, they start getting smaller? So I hit 3 or 4 different holes, and then I come back to that hole, and bang, I'm getting nice fish again. Well, here's why. Because those fish are sitting down there, and they get used to that presentation that you're using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to catch a couple of fish out of that hole. I'm going to move. I'm going to catch a couple of fish out of that hole. I'm going to move. But if I'm fishing crappies, instead of waiting that 20 minutes for that fish to make that circle and come back through to me again, that is where I'm going to use my tip-ups. Now, remember, there are 3 of us fishing. If we're hole hopping, we're not sitting there with 2 rods doing one of these out of the, 2 holes right next to each other. We're using 1 rod. If we do get on a school of fish and we pull that shackle over the top of us and we're jigging, we're using maybe 2 rods, 3 tops, because we have our dead stick and then we have our fishing. If it's really cold, I understand it. Don't get me wrong. It makes complete sense. But why not use all the lines that you're capable of doing? So going back to Tony and Rachel and myself, we're jigging in the bullseye. Bullseye, or the center of the circumference of an area. And we have a bunch of holes drilled in there. So why would I not take the opportunity? That's the school of fish that we want to stay on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Tony and Rachel stay there, and they're going to fish. They're going to stay there, and they're going to hole hop back and forth on those fish. I'm going to go out on the perimeter, and I'm going to set a tip up over here. I'm going to set a tip up over there. And I'm going to set a tip up over there. So now the three of us, let's say I'm in Minnesota, and we can only use two. We'll keep it simple. We're in Minnesota. All three of us are jigging with one line, and then we have the three tip-ups on the other side. Now, this is where the Navionics comes in, because the Navionics app, you pull it up when you go out, and you see that there's a break on the weeds, or you can see the structure change, or the subtle, indentations of the different breaks or the different points. And let's say there you can see that there's rocks over here, and you got big rocks going into little rocks. You can see all that on this app. So as I'm driving out, I can take that Navionics chip, and I can pull it up on my phone, put myself into the position to eliminate fishing time, because again, I work too many hours. I don't have enough time. I have, sports activities nowadays. Everything mounts up. My fishing time is limited. So I'm going to use that app. I'm going to put myself on the spot, or that position that I want to be at. I'm going to set tip ups on the sides. Now, people ask me, I usually at seminars, I start off and I say, everybody has a tip up, right? And 95% of the people raise their hands in a seminar. And I say, okay, how many people use tip ups for pike? 95% of the people raise their hands. Perfect. How many people use the tip ups for the walleyes? You got about 75% of them that raise their hand. And then also you get to how many people use their tip ups for perch. No, we're getting down there. We're down to about 10%, 15%. Crappies, less than that. Bluegills. Hardly anybody uses bluegills. But here's the question. When you're jigging out of your shack and you have your rod that you were jigging with all day, okay, I'm sitting there jigging with my rod right here, and also I got something going on, I have something that is up, I put it on a pail or set it on the ice, and I walk away. How many times when you come back is your bait either gone, or before you left, that rod went, you had a bite on that rod? I bet you it's happened to every one of you that are listening. Every one of you had that happen to you. And majority of the time, it's a bigger fish than what you're catching. Well, why is that? Because if we're rapidly jigging, or we're moving things around or whatnot, maybe that bigger fish is sitting there just studying it for a while. It's that wiser, smarter fish that's sitting over in the weeds and watching all the young bucks go up and take your bait, but this one is really contemplating. Well, it's the same thing with tip-ups. You can set a tip-up off to the sides for that wiser, bigger fish. I would say at least 80% of the time when I'm fishing with tip-ups and they're active, I'm going to catch my biggest panfish, including bluegills, on tip-ups. Everybody usually fishes bluegills with waxworms and bloodworms and spikes, either the red, the yellow, the white, the blue, whatever the case may be. Bluegills eat minnows. Big bluegills will eat minnows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bad boy right here. Okay, it's the same functionality on all round tip-ups. All right, so you have your T-bar that's right here. You have your flag that's right here, and that raises up just like so. And then you have your shaft down here and your spool. Okay, so I have my tip-up line, which I'm just going to do one of these. My tip-up line. I barely have any tip-up line on here just because I want to show you something. So this shaft, and we're going to get into this about let's go panfish, since we're talking about panfish. The majority of you are going to want to use this for panfish. This shaft moves up and down. Can everybody see that? Well, I'm not going to get a response because I can't see you or hear you. So if you can, great. But see that shaft, how it's moving up and down? Okay. That there, a lot of people, when they get to the lake, they put it all the way down and they put it in the water. And I'm going to move this down just a little bit. Okay. So they're going to put it all the way down and they're going to put it in the water just like that. Okay. So you can see the shaft, you can see the flag and everything. At the end of the day, what they're going to do is they're going to take that, put it up, and they're going to store it and put it in their bucket. Nice, easy way to store it. That's great. So when they get there, they pull that back out and then bring that all the way back down, and now we're fishing again. Here's a trick about these tip-ups, okay? Right here's a spring. Spring on that flag. If you think about it, you have a spring, any spring has compression, okay? So that spring, see how fast that goes up? If there's that much pressure pushing up on my finger, that means there's pressure pushing up on that T-bar. See that spring? When I come down and I put it under that T-bar, just like so, there is pressure on that T-bar. All right? So generally, I hope some of you, and by all means, please, if you have a tip laying around somewhere, go get it and play around with me. So this here, what happens is when a fish takes off, spring goes up, and that starts spinning. All right? Now, try this. I'm going to use this for panfish. I'm going to come all the way down. Well, not all the way down. By golly, I still need to have this spool in the water. Okay, that spool still needs to be in the water so it doesn't freeze up. I'm going to bring this shaft up a little bit. See how I have that distance there of that shaft? Now here's the spring. I put it there. See how much compression I took off of that spring? So now when I pull it up, okay, I'm going to go onto the right side. I have to be on the right side, and here's why. Because when I spool my tip-ups, here's another trick that I have. When I spool my tip-ups, I'm right-handed. So I always reel on a tip-up with my right hand. So I'm always going to spool it this way. It's faster, it's easier when my hands are cold. At the end of the day, I'm ready to go home. Every time I am going to spin with my right hand going away from me. So therefore, when this comes down, if I'm on the right side as the flag goes down, I know that it is going to spin left or it's going to go this way. Boy, this camera makes it look really fast. All right, so I'm going to go on the right side of it, and I'm going to come like this. Now watch this. If I come down like that, all right, if I go straight up, if I actually push this up more, because of the angle of this T-bar in this metal piece, it's automatically going to slide on its own. I want to go just to the point where it doesn't slide on its own, and I'm going to put it right there under there. Now I reduce the compression in the spring. I brought that up, and now it's going to move that way. Okay? But here's what's really cool. Now, remember how this turns back and forth? So now I reduce the compression here. I reduce the compression by pulling this shaft up. See how this tilts as if it's going in? If you look at the bottom right here, you have your spool. I'm going to put this behind so you can see it better. You have your spool and you have your guide. Okay? Right here's your spool. Right here's your guide. No matter if it is like this or straight up and down, that line always comes out of that guide no matter where it's at. So if it's straight up and down, it'll come out of that right there. If it's like this, it'll come out of it right there. It doesn't matter how this spool sits in the water, that line is going to come out the exact same way because of that guide right there. All I'm doing is pulling this down, okay? So I take this shaft, I tilt it down a little bit, and now I'm going to set it just like that on the soft side. So on the T-bar, you have a northern setting and you have a walleye setting, is what is common, I guess the common thing people look at it. So if I come closer, there's a square side, which is a northern side, and a beveled side, that is a walleye side. That is how majority of the people, when they talk about that, majority of the people, when they talk about a T-bar, they ask, okay, do you put it on the northern setting or the walleye setting? Well, the walleye setting, the beveled side, okay? But anyways, I'm going to tilt that down. I'm going to go on the right-hand side. And right now, I'm having a hard time because it wants to spin on its own. It wants to slide on that shaft all by itself. So I have to come back a little bit to put it on there. Now, oh, I was too light. I bumped it. I'm sorry. So it's sitting there. You know, bluegill comes up and takes this and barely, I've got a little slack in there, barely touches it, and that flag goes up. That was lighter than any spring bobber that you can get. Okay, so now I have a flag, and my kids are running. My kids are running out there. They're going to go there. Here's another, I guess, mistake, in my opinion, that people make when they get over to a panfish tip-up especially. Common, I did it for years. I would take this tip-up. I would, if you look at it, when it's a panfish, that T-bar is doing no more than that. It's just barely twitching because that bluegill just sucked it in and he's holding it. Now it's this here. You get over there, the biggest mistake, in my opinion, again, what people do is they take that tip up, they pick it up, then they feel for the line. And as soon as they feel any tension at all, they set the hook. But with a panfish, when they set the hook, they're using more arm. Remember the flexibility that you have with your rod. So when you set the hook on any fish, okay, you're moving quite a ways for this to have any amount of pressure on it. A tip-up does not have that. A tip-up, what a tip-up will do, there's zero stretch on that line. Or if there's any, there's very little if I'm using a fluorocarbon. So here, what you're going to do, when I get over to it, I'm not going to take this tip up. I'm not going to move it to the side at all. People are like, what are you talking about? What I'm going to do, this tip up is sitting in the hole just like that. I'm going to walk up. I'm going to grab this T-bar. It's called breaking it. All I'm going to do is grab that T-bar and set the hook. Now that panfish didn't feel any pressure of me grabbing it and pulling it to the side. It didn't feel any of that. All it is I hit that. I walk up, grab it right here by the T-bar. I'm right up over the T-bar. So I'm grabbing the T-bar just like that. I'm setting the hook. Now I'm bringing my fish in. What do I do once I bring this tip up in? Most people are sitting there thinking, well, you're going to reset it. No, I'm not. I'm going to take my rod and I'm going to fish over there. But here's another trick. When I drilled this hole for that tip up, because there's three, it's Tony, Rachel, and myself fishing together. So when I drilled this hole, I drilled 3 holes together. I put this in one of them. So when I caught that fish, that's going to come to the side, and the 3 of us are going to go over to that location where that tip up went off, and we're going to jig in that location. Now all of a sudden another tip up goes off. So Rachel and Tony go over there to get that fish. Tony actually drops down and starts fishing while Rachel is pulling that one in. And I'm going to take the time to reset this tip up that we just caught that fish on. And here's why. Because even if the fish are, I'd say the fish are not very active that day, we're using the tip ups for a scouting device. I like to refer to it almost like a fish tank, a cow pasture, a wedding, any of it. Let's talk about like cows in the field. There's a wagon out there with a ton of hay out there, and that hay wagon doesn't get hit at all. There's 200 head of cattle out in this field all day long, and nothing hits it. Also, one cow walks up to the hay wagon and it starts eating, and all of a sudden, all the other cows go up to the hay wagon and they eat. Look at a field before right before the night or whatever. One deer comes out and they all come out to eat. Look at a wedding. I'm guilty of it. You go to a wedding and everybody's sitting around the bar and they're having drinks, they're having a good time, and also, that food comes out and it's out there for a half hour and nobody's going up to the food because everybody's having a good time talking and having a few drinks before dinner. Also, that one person, it's usually me, that one person takes off and goes up to the buffet bar and everybody comes up behind them. I'm a big boy. I like to eat. Well, fish are the same way. Fish are the exact same way. You can't make them eat, and they're going to eat when they want to eat. But when they start eating, now I was using this with a waxworm, with anything else on there, and we're going to get into the setup that I have on this tip-up. But with, let's say, a waxworm, I have it just sitting down there. I have 2 waxworms and 3 spikes sitting on a little treble hook. And the little treble hook, you're going to freak when I show you how little of a treble hook I use. But when that first fish starts inhaling it, nibbling it, and spitting it back out, well, debris flies off of that, especially waxworms. Waxworms, they start breaking up and, debris starts flying everywhere. Well, when that happens, it attracts more fish. It's called a feeding frenzy. When you go to Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, wherever the case may be, and you walk into these places that have the great big fish tanks, there's minnows swimming all over the place and no fish are eating, and also one fish goes crazy, starts eating, and they all start eating. It's the same thing. So this here, legally, what I'm doing is I'm sitting there letting it in the hole because that's my fishing device, and that bluegill is tearing that waxworm up or that spike up and throwing debris, and all the other fish are starting to go on a feeding frenzy. Now, when I get over there, I catch that fish. Before I even put my hook in the water, here's Tony and Rachel catching the bluegills that I just found scouting with my tip-up. It's pretty cool. Same as crappies. You can use this tip-up the exact same way for crappies on suspended water. You can take that tip-up and you can put it all over the place. Since we're talking, panfish, we're going to get right into the rail style. And people are like, well, that's cool that you can do that with the round style, but I have the rail or the wood style. Well, here we go. Rail or wood style, there's 3 different settings, okay? So you have your 2 screws on the side of the tip-up, all right? That there, all that does is tightens the movement side and forth. Then you got this little devil right here, okay? I don't know if everybody can see that or not. There's, I gotta figure out. There we go. Well, anyways, you got the bar, and then you got a screw that my hand is on. See that screw there? Right here. So that screw loosens up and tightens up to adjust the length of this shaft. All right. So majority of the people will set it so when they get done fishing at night, they have this little line guide. They put it just like so. They would spin that down, put that bad boy in there just like that. Packs up real nice and tight for the bucket. That's where I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to pull that back up, being the flag. I'm going to bring my line guide down, and that's where I'm going to put it in the water, just like that. But most people, they'll actually go down deeper because they think they got to be way down deep. And that was me too. Let me tell you how I found out about this with the panfish. So Wolfpack Adventures, we guide. At times there's 20, 30 people that are guiding, or that we're guiding, that the Wolfpack guides are guiding or fishing with 20 or 30 people because we do corporate groups and children groups and all that stuff. Well, when you are wearing gloves, or not everybody can feel the fish bite, or they have it down that they're feeling the fish. Well, I had to figure out a way to keep all of our employees or all of our guests occupied or enjoying themselves and catching fish. So we had to come up with different ways to be able to help produce fish for those that were having a hard time catching a fish. That's how we came up with this. It didn't come overnight, believe me. I mean, we fish, man, do we do a lot of fishing. Well, anyways, I'm going to bring this down. Again, we're going to talk about the compression on here, going back and forth, compression, pushing up on the T-bar, all that other stuff. So, coming down for panfish, we're going to set it like that, or for walleyes, for pike, we're going to do that. For panfish, we're going to set it way out on the tip, is what a lot of people do. Well, the problem with that is I'm going to show you, if I'm going to be way out on the tip, can you see that? I still have to move it that far before it goes off. All right? So what if I come back, this way, okay? And I set it so it barely moves. All right? Now I'm going to set it under the beveled area again. I have it tilted too far. This is what I got it. There we go. So right there, all right, can you see that? I barely touched that thing. I barely touched it. So again, with this one, I'm going to bring it down, all right? And you're going to find this on your own. When you try setting this, it's not down all the way or whatnot. It's not going to let you set it because it's immediately going to take off. All right. So this thing is automatically going to slide down on you on a hard time. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to set it right there. I'm barely going to touch it. And it's going to go off. Now that's for panfish. You ask yourself, that is really cool. I didn't think about that. You can take this again. You got your line guide. You got your spool. Again, I'm going to take this. I'm going to start tilting it. Now you notice how I tilted it. It's no longer straight. See how it's tilted? Well, I went too far. I'm going to tilt it right about there. I'm going to set it. Again, I'm tilted too far. And once you get that sweet spot, that's where you're going to leave it. Okay? So I'm going to come back. I'm going to put it right there. That's where I need to be. It's tilted a little bit. Barely touch it. It's going to go off. Now, here's a trick to you. All right. So we talked about panfish. A lot of people are going back and forth with panfish, and they're going, holy mackerel, I can use these as a scouting device. I'm really excited. I mean, I'm taking a trip out by Mike Howe in March here over on Pack that we're going to be fishing, and we can have 6 lines per person. I can't even imagine the fun I'm going to have fishing all of multi-species doing that. Because now, let's say we got crappies, we had a lot of fun. Bluegills, we caught a lot of fish. I'm on a couple local lakes here in Wisconsin where, a 9-inch, 10-inch bluegill on tip-ups and jig sticks is not uncommon. And, of course, I like to release a bigger bluegill. So if it's over, 8.5, I'm going to throw it back. And the reason being is that's what I want on those lakes. I want to keep those big bluegills so my kids have that opportunity when they're bigger. Well, or right now, they fish quite a bit with me. But I'm going to take this exact same setup. I'm going to go for walleyes now. I had enough of the panfish. Usually, the walleyes are going to be in the same area as the panfish. You're going to drill. You're going to find that transition. Again, I'm going to be using the Navionics chip. I'm going to figure out where exactly I want to be. Spot on the spot. Okay, you're going to have to move a little bit when you get there. Don't expect you're going to drive up and say, okay, it's right here within, 2 feet. You're going to have to move a little bit just to make sure that it's there. But when I'm going to go walleye fishing, I'm going to take this bad boy right here. Oh. So this here is my flasher my graph, whatever you want to call it. I personally, I still use my bird. All right, so what I do is I turn this bad boy on, and I'm going to be looking at different areas, and you guys can't really see that anyways. But a lot of people, when they get to the position or they get to an area, what they do with their tip up is they take, we're guilty of it, we promoted ourselves. They take this right here, and there's a weight in there. You can take a, throw it on the jig, send it down to exactly where you want. And a lot of people, for your walleyes, will go within 6 inches of the bottom. You think you got to be right on the bottom. Well, all fish look up when they eat. So walleye, murkier water, let's say Lake of the Woods, something that's really murky, you're going to want to be fairly close to the bottom, but you're not going to want to be 6 inches. 6 inches is my hand, basically. So you're only going to be off the water or off the bottom about that much. When you're off the bottom that much and you have a, let's say what all of us dream of, that 12-pound walleye, it's going to be that wide. Now his head comes down a little bit, don't get me wrong, but 6 inches is taking, it's taking away a lot. For walleyes, personally, I like to go about a foot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this graph, or this, let's say I'm going to use the round cell right now. I'm going to go down. I'm going to put my graph down the hole, and I'm going to continue to watch my minnow go down. I'm not going to use weight on my line. I don't personally like to use weight on my line, any split shot or anything like that, because I think if that minnow is trying to swim up from the bottom, you got to let it swim. Never in a million years at a fish tank or anywhere else that I've ever been do I see a minnow that is stuck to 3 inches of where we want it to be. Half of the fun is the chase for these pike. It's the same thing, guys, as you in high school. Half the fun was the chase for that gal that you were chasing. Same thing with a pike. Same thing with a walleye. They like the chase going after that fish or that, you know, the bait fish. So I'm going to take my graph and I'm going to watch my bait go down, and you might be pleasantly surprised. There's suspended walleyes and stuff in a lot of different lakes, but a lot of times you'll get down to the bottom and you'll see how that fish is reacting. Now, if I knew anything about computers and PowerPoints and all that stuff, I would probably be able to show you all the videos off of my AquaViews, but I don't know how to use that. Fin or feathers, I know how to use AquaView, don't get me wrong. I just don't know how to put it, all that fanciness on here. Maybe because I just don't take the time for it. But I'm going to take walleye fishing very seriously. Again, I'm going to set this. If I don't have any wind, I'm going to set it like I'm bluegill fishing or crappie fishing. I want the least amount of tension possible for that walleye to hit. Walleyes are very finicky. They're going to touch it. They're going to sit there and gnaw on it a little bit, and then they're going to take it. There's so many times when I was growing up, walleye fishing at night, we would go over, we'd get a flag, we'd sit there for 5 minutes, sitting there staring at a tip up, and also it would start doing one of this. Real nice and slow. And every one of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Just real nice and slow. That thing will start doing one of these. Or it will go. And then it will start going. Well, this jittery action is him gnawing on that bait fish before he takes it. All right. So I'm going to bring that shaft up. I'm going to turn it a little bit. And I'm going to put it on the light setting, just like so. So when that fish hits, again, I'm going to put it over there. I'm going to show you. Barely moved it, and that fish took off. So that's with the round one and the rail style. That's how I'm going to fish walleyes. Pike is a complete different animal. Pike, you can be 2 feet off the bottom. You can be 5 feet off the bottom. Late spring or late ice, I should say, early spring, when you have clear ice. I've caught in some of my biggest pike within 6 inches from the bottom of the ice. And the way that I did that is when I was walking out, I'd be walking and I'd see these great big logs right under the ice. Well, those were the pike scratching their backs or looking for the fresh oxygen coming into the holes and stuff like that. So pike is one of them things where I'm going to use a rail style just because I can show you a little bit better. And we have a couple of different options. We have the big tooth option that have the bigger spools. Now, if you have the capabilities or the different things that you can have a different setup for everything, that's cool. If not, I'm going to show you how to take this exact same setup and cut it off, retie it, and be able to fish every different species for one tip up. Now, after you start utilizing the tip ups, I have no doubt that you're going to go buy an arsenal of tip ups just because of the versatility, flexibility, and the way that they produce fish. I can see on my panfish while I'm jigging, I can use them for walleyes. Now I'm going to use them for pike. Pike is an awesome thing to fish. I love pike fishing. I love big pike fishing. If I had to choose one fish that I'm going to use my tip-ups for, it's going to be pike, and I'm very, very, very serious about pike fishing. So what's going to happen with pike fishing, I'm going to come down. You have a couple of different options again. Let's say I'm going to be fishing pike with smelt at your borax or cured at some point, or the bloaters or anything like that. Where it's legal again is I'm going to raise this all the way up. I'm going to tilt it. I'm going to bring it to the side like that, and I'm going to use just a real small hook, and I'm going to throw it on the bottom. And when that fish sucks it up off the bottom, he's going to take it and he's going to run. All right. They're going to sit there and they're going to eat it, and I'm going to catch it. When it comes down to using bigger, let's say sucker minnows, if I'm going to use a sucker minnow, let's say I'm going, if I'm going to go to on a trophy pike fishery, I'm going to go either Lake of the Woods, I'm going to go to Buffalo Bay, I'm going to go up to Rainy River, Rainy Lake, something like that, Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Million. I'm going to go to some of the lakes that have really big pike. I'm going to use suckers that are, I would say, anywhere from 10, 12, 15 inches, the biggest suckers that I can find. And that is where this bad boy right here comes in very crucial. It is my deluxe lithium rechargeable aerator for my minnows. It has two hoses that come off of there that I put in, and every night that I go in, I can take it and recharge that and not worry about my big pike minnows dying on me. It's extremely cool. So I can recharge that every night. There's two different settings. You can either do a constant flow, so they have a lot of oxygen, or you can do 10 minutes on, 15 minutes off, just by switching the switch right or left. So anywho, the pike setup. This here is a pike setup a lot of the times we use. It has 80-pound fluorocarbon on it, no wire, no nothing. It has the spinner blades as long as it is part of a lure. I know that it's not, I'm moving way too fast, but really, honestly, I'm not moving very fast at all. So that is there, okay? I'm going to hook one on one side of the minnow, one on the other side of the minnow. So I'm going to go like this. I'm going to spread them out on each side of the minnow. Okay. Now, I'm going to kind of play a game here. Everybody that is going back and forth and they said, I try those big pike minnows and I can never keep the flag down, and I get false flags all the time and stuff because I'm putting it like that. And all I did was put it behind that pike setting on the bar, okay, and the big indented cave on there. Well, here's the trick to it. And everybody, like, if you're anything like myself, I've tried the rubber, I've tried matchbook covers, I've tried everything over there before I started really playing with this. I'm going to get a little closer to you here. Remember how we took this shaft and we pulled it one way for our panfish, right? We pulled it that one way. All we did was we took this shaft, we tilted it. You're going to really freak on this. I'm going to leave it just like it is, tilted, just like that. I'm going to come up here. See how that there is hitting? See how it's constantly going back and forth and hitting that I hope I'm not shaking too much and people can see that. See that? How it's hitting that bar, but it's not releasing. Now, if a big pike comes up and smashes it, he's going to hit that thing and that's going to take off. What this thing here does is it has to actually push down. If you watch that whole spring there, see how it's moving there? It actually has to push down on that flag to get it out of the way for it to pop up. All by taking this and tilting it that much. All of your problems are solved by going from here. Where are we? There we go. From there to there. But yet all the line comes out to the exact same spot down here out of that line guide. So all it is. It's just taking this to this. You already own this. It's already sitting in your shed. You can try this before you even get into anything else. All right, we only got a couple minutes left, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into some things. So, pike fishing. Here's a fluoro that I use for, this here is a 60-pound fluorocarbon. Can use 80-pound for my pike rigs, going all the way through. 3-pound, well, 3-pound frost right there. I don't know if you can, yeah, 3-pound frost, CPT ice line. This is a fluorocarbon. I'm using that as my lead for my panfish, going down to, I have a couple of different options there. So if I come into this bad boy right here, this is my tip-up bag. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's kind of crazy. Crazy tip-up line. Let's see here. I have, there we go. So this is where I said you're going to freak about my panfish. Right here is what I use for my panfish hook. I don't know if you can see that. I doubt it, being white on white. It's a number 18 treble with a little fuzz on it. That's all it is. It's a glittery fuzz. That right there I use for my crappies. I use this one right here for my walleyes. My walleye and my perch and everything else. Again, number 18 treble. That's what's on my on my tip-ups, guys. It's not a 1-aught. It's not a 2-aught. It's a number 18, number 16. I use real little. The reason I use really little is because when that fish comes up, I do not want to feel it. I want it to touch it, hold on to it, and go with it. Going back to the pike, I use on the bottom side right here. If I grab the other side, if I come into this right here, I have here's all my pike lures, which are all CPT, big tooth tackle, pike rigs. I got them all geared up, ready to go. See them all in there? That's where I have all that. I have all my jigging stuff right here. So all my different jigs and all that other stuff. We have braid. So I'm doing, say if I'm going out and I just have I don't want to call them hammer handles, but if I have a lot of little pike that is going to be a lot of fun for my kids, I'm going to use a number 16 treble on 15, the 15 frost, the braid, going straight to the treble on the tip-up line. And stay away from the real big hooks, but I shouldn't say real big hooks, but the big, anytime you're using a treble, anytime you're using a straight hook, anything like that, that's what I'm using. I'm using a number 16, maybe a 14 tops on my pike rigs coming right off my 15 frost. Let's see here. Gloves. A lot of people going out tip-up fishing. This is the most crucial thing that there is when it comes to tip-up fishing. Your hands are your drag. Your hands are your drag. So the amount of tension that you put when I'm fighting a fish, I'm coming up through. Let me grab this one right here. When I'm coming up through, just because it doesn't have a hook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. See how I pinch that line with my fingers? That is my drag, and right here is my reel. And when that fish starts pulling, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to, not completely, but I'm going to keep tension on it, but I'm going to let it run when it wants to run. And then I'm going to continue to go. When I'm pulling that line in, I am not bunching it right at my feet. I'm throwing it out with the wind. Let's say the wind is coming from my left. I'm throwing it to the right. So that wind is laying it out real nice. So it's not bunching up right at my feet. There's a big difference there. And you're going to have a lot less tangles, a lot more fishing time. Man, this thing just isn't long enough. We could go on for days and hours and everything else.
Yeah.
Pike fishing, again, when that fish is sitting there screaming the other way, let's say I'm walking over to that pike and this thing is just rip roaring, just going like all get up. I'm not going to pick this thing up to see if that fish is there. I'm going to break it again. I'm going to come up with my hand right here on that, and I'm going to set the hook. And now I'm not going to set it like I'm fishing marlin and reach for the stars when I set the hook, but I'm going to take this, set the hook. The reason being is if I wait for that fish to stop, that means he is not running away from me. He's sitting there. Whereas if he's running away from me and this thing is spinning like all get up, and I set that hook, that means that line is coming back across his face. So it's coming back across, and either you're going to turn them inside out or you're going to catch them right on the corner of the lip. Same thing with walleyes. Wait till they're running away from you. Don't take that tip up, move it to the side, and feel if you have any weight on it, because now it's not natural anymore. It just doesn't feel right. It's somebody sitting there, pulling something away from you. You can feel that tension. Well, so can a fish. Don't give it the opportunity to win the game. Okay? I know that we covered quite a bit. I mean, I know that I like to babble on. I hope everybody learned something. Is there any questions?
Yeah, Pat, we got a bunch of questions. I guess the first one, we'll just go in order, is your favorite brand of tip ups, which obviously we got to see throughout the presentation. But is there a certain model tip ups that you like to use?
All depends on what I'm doing. There's certain brands. I use the clam tip ups. I use all clam tip ups, and there's two reasons why I use the clam tip ups. Number one is because of the versatility of the smoothness. I mean, they are probably the smoothest on the market, and I can say that with very confidence. And the other reason that I use them is if I'm going out pan fishing, let's say just pan fishing, a lot of times I will use the round, these right here. And the reason being is I have the capabilities right here of a lot of different jigs, because sometimes you got to change jigs quite a bit as you, let's say I'm going for perch or I'm going for crappie or I'm going for bluegill or whatnot. Majority of my panfish tip ups have that all right here. I usually use horizontal jigs in there. The other reason that I use these is, especially with my kids and everything else, when I fold them up in a 6-gallon clam pail, I can fit, 9 to 11 tip ups like this in there. And with that being said, I have enough tip ups to add to my arsenal. If my kids want to bring their friends along, I have a lot of tip ups along. And it also offers a pail, for the kids to sit on once I'm out there.
All right, cool. How much wire I have to put in the butt tip for trout? It says butt tip up for trout.
How much wire do you put in the butt tip for trout?
Yeah, up for trout.
Well, trout, how much line do you put out for trout? Maybe is a question on that.
Yeah, wire though. Wire seems to be in. Do you use wire for trout?
No, we don't. We don't use any wire for trout. What we do is we use the mono 6-pound fluorocarbon all the way down into a circle hook with spawn sacks. We usually use a lot of spawn sacks, different colored spawn sacks. We don't cure a lot of times. We also use shrimp. Anytime that we have current, we're using spinning glows on top of our corkies and stuff like that. The most of our trout fishing with our tip ups, we were letting a pretty good lead out, but a lot of, I mean, majority of our trout fishing is all done with automatic fishermen.
Okay.
You know, the setting device here in Wisconsin that's legal to use.
All right. Do you ever put a double hook rig down for crappie?
I do not. The double, unless you're talking the tandem. If you're talking the double hook rig, one high, one low, yeah, you can. But with that being said, you have to be extremely careful on where you're fishing, because if you're in Wisconsin, that counts as two of your lines. So if you have two of your hooks up in, you know, let's say you're Twinkie rigging, I like to call it Twinkie rigging, is if you have one on the bottom and one on top for suspended, that right there is two of your lines, and I'm covering less water that way, where I could use a tip up. And once I find, let's say the crappie is a lot of times, let's say if you're in a 30-foot basin and you're only fishing, those fish are cruising, I would say 12 to 17 feet down normally, you know, within that basin. That's where I'm going to set, and I'm going to make sure that I'm using my graph at all the different locations while doing that.
Okay. Have another question. Weeds or basin to start?
Weeds or basin to start? That's a loaded question. It all depends on, am I fishing crappies, if I fishing bluegills, the time of year, if the weeds are real green yet and have all the larvae and the bugs that are still sticking to it. I like weeds. I always like weeds. No matter what, you're going to be able to produce a lot of fish internally, but I like to find the holes within the weeds. I like to find the transition, again, using the graph or the Navionics app. You can find that transition where it's going straight from weeds to basin, and a lot of times with the spread that I have the capabilities with my tip ups, I'm going to be able to cover it and figure out exactly what or where I need to. Now he's talking where to start. Oh man, crappies, a lot of times the crappies I'll be the basin, bluegills I'll be the weeds, and pike I like to be right on the edge along with the walleyes.
Okay, great. This question from Marcus, I'll probably be able to help a little bit. At what point will we be able to sync GPS coordinates between the Navionics app and Garmin Active Captain and a Garmin head unit? Will it ever happen, or do I have to hand enter them off my phone onto the head unit? So, yeah, Marcus, a lot of things are going to be coming up this year. One of the first things was getting Garmin units to use Navionics data, and those charts will be available for your units as well as uploads to upload your newer units. Soon you'll get that. I don't know an exact date, but you will be able to sync your Garmin units with your Navionics app. We just relaunched the app again. It's got a new look, some new features. So you'll check that out. But as soon as you'll know when that'll happen. But I would think by this spring you'll see a lot more things coming up. Minnows or fathead or rosy red for crappie?
Every day is different. Majority of the time, I like fatheads. Rosy reds, a lot of times, if you're in a murky water, let's say if I'm up at Lake of the Woods, Devil's Lake, anywhere that you have a red glow presence, meaning your predominant jig is going to be a red glow that works the best for you. If I had a choice between any of it, I would take a fathead over a rosy majority of the days.
Okay, great. Here's a question from Matt. Do all the different manufacturers of tip-ups offer this adjustability, or is it just the clam versions?
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I guess it's the versatility of the different fish you could catch with those tip-ups.
Right. A lot of them have that versatility. But the round ones, you're going to have that versatility just because this shaft has to be able to come into the unit itself. The same with, this one here when it comes to the side, depending on the majority of them have the versatility of the depth adjustment, and a lot of times the reason being is because of the ice thickness and everything. So
Okay.
I know that majority of the brands it is adjustable.
All right, great. Tom asks, do you use any split shot?
I do not. I do not. I don't like using split shot on anything. It takes forever for that fish to get down there, or that presentation to get down there. But if I'm using my panfish, if I'm using these things for panfish, a lot of times what I'm using that horizontal jig, and a lot of times it's tungsten, and that is my split shot on those. But majority of the time, anytime I have a minnow, you ever watch a minnow that is sometime when you have a minnow with a split shot with a camera down there, watch that thing. It's swimming up towards the top the entire time. It is not cruising the water. It's constantly trying to get off, and get out of that zone or that area. And a lot, I don't know. If you really want to do that, then just hook it in tail and watch it. I don't. I don't like split shot. That is one reason. The other reason, anytime that you have early or late ice where that ice is kind of soft on the bottom, that split shot or that line is going to make a groove on the bottom of the ice. So it's going to have that split shot, or even if you do like a two-way swivel to, in line to adjust your two lines. That's why I personally always will use a nail knot, so you don't have that any possibility of anything sticking to the bottom of the ice. I've lost a few big fish doing that. So I do not know.
Okay, Ryan asks, do you use fluorocarbon leader on your tip ups?
I do. I use fluorocarbon leader on my tip ups 95% of the time. Reason being, it has less stretch. Mono has a little bit more stretch to it. Fluorocarbon doesn't reflect the light. Fluorocarbon sinks. It does it, so that there will help it go down a little bit faster than mono. Mono usually floats. So I use the fluorocarbon. I've had great luck with it. And
Okay.
matter of fact, for my panfish, what I use is a 3-pound frost fluorocarbon. And then for my walleyes, I use a 6-pound frost fluorocarbon. If you've never used this line, the frost line, I am telling you what, this is my first year using it. I'm sold. I'm sold tenfold.
Okay, great. Bruce, thoughts on quick strike rigs versus single treble?
Quick sight rigs, a lot of times you have the two hooks on both sides, one towards the back, one towards the front. I like it because you can set the hook immediately. Like I said, I don't get over to it and wait till it runs. I get over to it, and if it's running, I'm gonna cross its eyes. I'm gonna break it right then and there, and I'm gonna turn that fish inside out. A single treble has its advantages at times when you're using a smaller minnow, anything like that, where the width of the pike's face, depending on how big of the pike that I'm fishing. But if I'm using a quick set and it has two of the rigs going back and forth, and that fish has a narrow mouth and it happens to take it in the head or at the tail on the initial thing, I miss a lot of fish. Don't get me wrong, I miss a lot of fish on the quick set too, but that's the nature of the beast, I guess. I prefer the quick set or that real small treble.
Okay, Jim asks, do you have to periodically relube them? I'm not sure.
No, yeah, he's talking about the lube inside the grease, so it doesn't freeze up, is what he's asking, Anthony. And my answer to that is yes and no. There's so many people that will take it and they'll put so much lube in there that it actually hinders the I guess the easiness. I don't even know what the right word is. I guess the how fast or how easy it is for it to spin. So a lot of times when they take that sub grease or sub-zero lube and they put it in there and they squirt it in there, they're putting way too much, and it's actually crowding the shaft to the point where it does not spin as freely or as smoothly. So even coming out of the case, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take that T-bar off, wipe down the shaft just one time and then I'll put it back in, and I don't have the problem of it freezing up, and I don't have the problem of it going. A lot of I say no, only to the fact of the amount of the more and more that you use the tip up, yes, but don't over lube it, if that makes sense.
Sure. Do you use a steel leader for pike on your tip up? Bruce asks.
I do not. I don't use steel at all. I use a lot of the heavy fluorocarbon. Matter of fact, I use the 60, 80 pound fluorocarbon, even if I'm using a single hook. Well, here's I don't use steel, but if I'm going to be fishing on a lake that I have doubts that I'm going to get that 40-inch pike, I'm going to use the 15-pound frost braid right here. That's what I'm going to use. It's 15-pound frost braid, and I'm going to tie it to a number 14 or 16 treble on the lakes that I don't think is capable of producing a 40 or bigger. But if I'm going to be fishing a 40 or bigger, I will always have either the quick set rigs from Big Tooth Tackle, or I will have the single hook coming off of a 60 or 80 pound fluorocarbon leader. I don't like, personally, I do not like the wire, and the reason I don't is, again, it restricts the mobility of the minnow.
Okay. Bruce asks, why are Canadian lakes not offered on GPS finder units? So I'm thinking if he has a GPS now, I'm not sure what brand, but Navionics has a U.S. and Canada. Hot Maps should have a listing of most lakes. One of the great features of the Navionics charts is that if you have a lake that isn't done, you could do sonar logging yourself. If you have a specific question, you could always go to help@navionics.com to find out compatibility, things like that. Bruce, if I didn't answer your question, email me at agrassi, GRASSI, @navionics.com. And then, is there any maintenance on these tip ups over time?
Yeah, I mean, not really. A tip up is pretty it's very, very hard to have a problem with it. Unfortunately, I've ran over them with tip up or with snowmobiles and four wheelers and trucks and everything else. And I mean, they're durable. You can beat the living heck out of them. Maintenance, of course, you're going to want to change your line once in a while. You're going to want to change the different. You're going to want to change the different leaders on it. Going back to the lubing, if you use it a lot like I do, yeah, you're going to want to lube it up a little bit. Really, a tip up, there's not much. No, I mean, once in a while you got to tighten down the bolt on top on the T-bar, but I don't think that you really have to worry about. One thing that actually, yeah, there's a collar that comes off of here coming into. Oh, you can't see that. Yeah, you can. So right here, if you look at this right there, there's a rubber collar that holds this spring down to where it's at. Once in a while, that rubber collar will start getting worn out and stuff. That's an easy fix. You can either go buy another rubber collar, or you take a zip tie. I think I actually have one that's right here. I have a zip tie on there. See that? So that there will keep it. And the reason that you want to do that is because this here will spin. Let's say if I have a minnow down here, if I don't have that, if I move that zip tie and that minnow figured it out, he's swimming this way, he can take all the line that he wants, take that zip tie, come all the way down to that, to that collar right here. And that way it'll stop it from spinning.
Now, not that we want to rush our season, but at the end of the season, what do you do with all your tip ups? for the off season? Where do you store them somewhere special or?
Yeah, I mean, we have a warehouse, Wolfpack Adventures. I mean, we have probably 300 tip ups and 300 J sticks and 40 shacks, and like I said, we have client groups of probably 30 people, pretty much almost every day, depending on where we're at, and you don't want it extremely high. You don't want. I mean, I don't do anything special with them. I throw them in the tip up bags or in the bins and store them up there. Like I said, it's hard to break a tip up. It's not like a rod where you're gonna break a tip or
All right.
something like that. Tip ups you can be pretty harsh with a tip up and not worry about it.
Okay, cool. Ryan asked, what do you think of the new I-tip used with the rod? Is it better or worse?
The new eye tip.
Yeah.
I, I guess I haven't studied into it enough to even know. I really don't.
All right. Um, and then there's some nice comments on the webinar. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I thought I was just gonna zone out for an hour, but I started really listening. Maybe I'll get to do an ice fishing trip with you one day.
Yeah,
Um,
we'd love to have you.
all right.
There's so much more. I mean, I know that this is very short and anything. Somebody might have a question and all that, but if you have any questions at all, by all means, you can either, call me, Facebook my business. The guys will get a hold of you and talk to you there. You can shoot a contact form off of our website. There's so many different ways and the website is wolfpackadventures.com. Our Facebook page is Wolfpack Adventures. I guess my personal is Pat Kalmerton. Where it's not only myself looking at it. So I shouldn't say myself, but it's I got one that's Pat Kalmerton. I know that the guys will answer off of there, and we got there's so much stuff. The other thing, matter of fact, before I roll, I know that we're talking Navionics chips and all that, or Navionics apps and all that. This spring, watch for it a little bit. I think we're going to be doing a social media blast of myself going out Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and using the Navionics app, in our vehicle, driving around to find different structures that we would like to fish from the shoreline. You
Mm.
know, before we have all the boats and everything ready, raring and ready to go. We're gonna go out there and play. And the reason that we got that idea is a couple years ago we ended up out there with I bet you there were 50-mile-an-hour winds, and we ended up fishing from shore, and it was an absolute black. Oh, we meleeed the pike and everything. It was awesome. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
Yeah, yeah. All right, great, Pat. Really appreciate this, and again, they could follow up with you on your website if they have any other questions, or if
Mm-hmm.
they're looking to book. It seems like an awesome adventure, and then yeah, we're definitely going to look forward to some upcoming webinars on ice fishing. Yeah, great job. Um, all right, so have a great night, guys. Thank you for attending. Look for more free webinars on navionics.com, and have a great evening.
We appreciate it.